Hello everybody and welcome to my channel, The Real Super Saiyan. Today is a new top 5 best stories list and I hope you enjoy. First top 5 stories list on a Batman villain I am doing, and I'm doing this one because Clayface is one of my top Batman rogues, and looking at Mr. Rogue's old top 5 best Clayface stories video, this one is different enough that there's a point for me to make this list. I've always loved shape-shifting villains and Clayface is one of the best. A lot of people compare his powers with the Sandman, but that's barely the similarities between the two. Clayface is much more of the type portrayed as a human-type monster, a normal guy with abilities he either loves or hates, he sees it as a gift or a curse. I love the more modern interpretation of Clayface since they usually focus on Basil Karlo, focus on his shape-changing monsters' love of movies. Also, I'm gonna have all Clayface stories, no matter who is the Clayface at the time, qualified for the list. And without further ado, the top 5 best Clayface stories. Number 5, Creatures of Clay. This is a two-part story in Shadow of the Bat issues 26 and 27. The adventure starts with Azrael Batman during Night Quest getting attacked by Lady Clayface, saying she wishes she didn't have to murder again. Since Lady Clayface's last appearance, she has become an item with Clayface 3, Preston Payne. These two have fallen in love and are together and having a child who has been kidnapped from their cave they live in. The child will be the 5th Clayface, named Cassius, and there's a lot more and better of him than you can imagine right now. From what I know, this is the best Lady Clayface story, and it's also faithful to Clayface 3's character. Preston is still struggling with the pain coming from his clay body condition, forcing him to melt someone to relieve his pain. Lady Clayface is the star of the story, and this was actually the first Clayface tale I ever read, so having it be on the list does have a bit bias from me. The monster who kidnapped their kid is Abator, who luckily gets the scare of his life. I find myself on the Clayface's sides in the story, hoping they get their child back and defeat the killer. Number 4, Chasing Clay. This story happened in Batman issue 550. The issue opens with some doctors from the DEO testing Clayface 5 and taking a skin graft from him, which grows and comes alive, causing havoc in the streets, traveling to Gotham to bust his dad out, Clayface 3. This is a story that turns the Clayface monster into an actual monster with a barely functioning brain. It can barely talk, and this 6th Clayface has the power of melting like Clayface 3, except he doesn't even have to touch what he melts, so it really relies on being a horror mystery. This Clayface is more like a parasite that infests each host, and when it's done, the last one rots to death, like this guy on screen. I think this is a really good Clayface story because it has Mythos retelling of the previous 5 Clayfaces, and the 5th one, a relatively unknown one, is here physically. The fact that the art and the story fit so well together, I think, made this a surprisingly good one-shot, and there are even a few surprises that happen in this issue with this cop and another villain who appears. Number 3, Clay. This story is in Detective Comics Annual 1 from 2018. Some people may call it Clayface's new origin story. Basil Karlo's father is seen that he was a special effects worker in the movies, and his special product is this clay from Daggett Industries that he uses. In the future, Basil Karlo becomes an actor and is looking to play the part of a story that is just like the Clayface's first appearance from Detective Comics issue 40, but Basil gets in a car accident disfiguring his face. To fix himself, he remembers his father's cream from Daggett, Renew You, that he uses and fixes himself, but he needs it to be, kept applying more and more until eventually he gets in an accident with the Daggett chemicals, transforming him into Clayface. The main thing about this story is Basil Karlo wants to prove to his dad that people can still love monsters, but at the same time, since Karlo wanted to change his face back to normal, does he really believe that? Batman gets tied into this story twice, and there are great moments as Batman at first is investigating Daggett, and that leads him to Basil Karlo, because his dad used Daggett's cream, I think that's the reason, and Bats gives Karlo some encouraging words. Clayface, when he has powers, decides to get revenge on the second skin production for them not hiring him, and he attacks Gloria, apparently killing her. For the art, I like the film roll edges the artist placed here, for example. Also in the future, Gloria Griffin becomes the creature Mudface. The thing I like most about this origin is the combination of the previous Clayface origins and the new stuff they included, like Gloria and naming the movie Second Skin. It really is the ultimate Clayface origin, and I think it's the best one. Number 2, The Mud Pack. This is a story that involves all 4 Clayfaces across 4 issues of Detective Comics, 604 to 607. At this time in Batman history, there has been 4 Clayfaces and they're all here, gathered by Basil Karlo, the story opening with Clayface 3's prison escape. Basil Karlo, the first Clayface, the one with no powers now, has brought them together. Clayface 2, Matt Hagen, died during Crisis on Infinite Earths, and part of his clay body just hangs around, because Basil collected it, so it's really a story of Clayface 1 and Lady Clayface. Cause yeah, Clayface 3 is definitely the most unstable of the group since he was arguing with his doll girlfriend Helena and broke her head off. Lady Clayface, being able to look like the outsider hero looker and use her powers, keeps Preston Payne in check. This is the big return of Basil Karlo back in the comics, and they focus here a lot on his love of movies. He even forces Batman to watch his old starring role, The Terror. Karlo's plan all along was to find a way to get all the powers of the other 3 Clayfaces for himself, and he succeeds, calling himself the ultimate Clayface, though him having Clayface 3 and 4's powers also disappear after this story. This story isn't all for nothing, as Clayface 3 and Lady Clayface become a couple at the end of it. There are a lot of more surprises in this story that the Clayfaces pull on Batman and even each other that I forgot all about rereading the issues. A story that has all 4 Clayfaces together in unique roles, and it all being led by the one obsessed with movies, adds up to an amazing Clayface tale in history. And number 1 is Mudnight Madness. The best Clayface story, I think, was in Joker's Asylum 2, Clayface. Tonight, Clayface is going after a theater replaying his movie The Terror, but he surprisingly finds that the people there watching the flick are people obsessed with him, and even asked to be drowned to death in his clay-like body, which Karlo agrees to. And this being the setup definitely startles Batman when he catches up with Karlo later. With that setup, surprisingly, there is some humor in here. Clayface himself is a lot more muddy and treated like a giant unstoppable creature when fighting. One thing with Basil Karlo Clayface I wish happened more is his love of acting and wanting to be remembered as a star, which is the main basis of this story. I find this story so shocking that it happened, and it fits with the Basil Karlo Clayface, my favorite one, and it explores Clayface's hopes to be remembered forever. I also like how Clayface has a new power to create clay people to be his minions. This is definitely his best story. He's not robbing banks. This is his most original personal story also. I also love great villain stories. That end with the villain escaping happens here, and those are my favorites. I would love this plot being turned into a side mission in a future video game. The art makes this look like a horror movie plot, which makes sense. The Terror, his own movie, was horror, so Clayface being used as a horror monster like this story, I think should happen more often. With the element of horror being present in this story, and the uniqueness of how he uses his powers, and that it's focusing on Basil Karlo Clayface, I really do think this is the number 1 Clayface story out there. And, well, those are the top 5 best Clayface stories to me. Like Basil Karlo, I'm also really interested in the making of movies, and the fact that a guy like that gets the power to shapeshift is perfect. All the other Clayface monsters I know about, but don't really love as characters outside of their first or second stories, which for many of them, after the 5th Clayface, they only had one story. I'm personally okay with sticking with just one super strong Clayface. And behind the scenes, I think the first 3 are really near perfect, if not perfect Clayface stories, but number 4 and 5 can be a little underwhelming if I'm thinking of like an outsider perspective. I have my fingers crossed for more Clayface appearances in media, especially video games. He's the perfect character for games, but he's been left out a lot. He was the only villain to not return in LEGO Batman 3. He wasn't in Arkham Origins or Knight, no version of him in the Telltale game, so hopefully he appears in Gotham Knights. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching this new top 5 list. Bye guys, and have a great day.